No one expected Mara Whitfield to react when her sister lifted the microphone and smiled. Before I continue, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. Your one click really helps support the channel. The ballroom was filled with candlelight and polished laughter, the kind that bounced easily off crystal glasses and silk dresses. Claire Whitfield stood at the center of it all, radiant and confident, already glowing with the certainty that this day belonged to her. Some people build perfect lives, Claire said lightly, pausing for effect, and others do the best they can. The room chuckled. Mara felt the words land before the meaning did. Raising a child alone takes courage, Claire continued, her smile never faltering. Especially when you're still waiting for someone to choose you. The laughter came louder this time. Mara didn't look up. She felt her son's small hand tighten around hers beneath the table. Noah was trembling. In that moment, standing in a room full of people who had watched her stay quiet for years, Mara knew something irreversible had happened. She wasn't embarrassed anymore. She was done. Mara had learned silence early. It was safer that way. At 34, she ran a modest accounting office above a bookstore in Charleston, South Carolina, where the scent of paper and old wood felt steadier than most people. Numbers made sense to her. They didn't twist themselves into cruelty or pretend to be kind while doing damage. Her days followed a careful rhythm: client meetings, reconciled ledgers, quiet lunches at her desk. On the filing cabinet beside her hung Noah's drawings, planets and rockets taped with mismatched corners. He was 10, thoughtful, observant in ways that startled adults. Mara had built her life around him, not loudly, not proudly, but thoroughly. She didn't complain about what she'd lost. She focused on what she was protecting. That was how she survived her family too, by staying useful, staying invisible, and never asking for more than she was offered. Noah was the one place Mara never felt small. He asked real questions and waited for honest answers. On evenings when homework stretched long and dinner ran late, he watched her closely, noticing what others missed. He knew when her shoulders stiffened, when her smile didn't reach her eyes. After soccer practice, cheeks flushed and cleats slung over his shoulder, he talked about science fairs and history projects like they mattered, because to him, they did. Mara listened. She always listened. She wanted him to grow into someone who felt seen in a world that often chose convenience over kindness. Walking home together through streets lined with blooming azaleas and salt-heavy air, she let herself believe that this quiet life was enough. That she didn't need validation. That love didn't require witnesses. Claire had never understood that kind of living. Growing up, she had been the bright one, the polished smile, the effortless confidence, the daughter their mother, Patricia Whitfield, proudly presented to the world. Claire collected approval the way others collected souvenirs. Her engagement to Daniel Harper, a successful financial advisor with a carefully curated life, felt like a final victory. Patricia announced family dinners like obligations, not invitations, and attendance was expected. Mara showed up because resistance cost more than compliance. That night, the house was immaculate. Lavender candles, wine chilled to the exact degree, every detail placed with intention. Claire barely acknowledged Noah. Patricia commented on Mara's blouse, her tone practiced. Then Daniel stood, extended his hand, and knelt slightly to Noah's level instead. "What are you into?" he asked. Noah's face lit up. Mara noticed. She always noticed when someone treated her son like he mattered. Later, while Mara organized place cards in Patricia's study, Daniel returned with 2 coffees. "You're doing most of the planning," he said quietly. Mara shrugged. Someone has to keep things from falling apart. He studied her longer than necessary, his expression unreadable. "Did you ever volunteer at Memorial Children's Hospital?" The question stopped her cold. She answered slowly. "Yes." "Years ago." Daniel nodded, as if confirming something he'd carried for a long time. "My sister was there," he said. "She used to talk about a woman who read to her. Sang when the nights were bad." Mara's breath caught. She called her Sunshine Girl. Daniel met her eyes. "That was you." The room felt suddenly smaller, heavier. In that moment, Daniel Harper wasn't just Claire's fiancé. He was someone who remembered who Mara had been before the world taught her to stay quiet. After that night, Daniel began to appear in Mara's life in ways that felt intentional but never intrusive. A short message thanking her for fixing a vendor error. A call to confirm seating logistics that didn't actually need confirmation. He spoke to her with focus, not politeness. When he asked about Noah, He waited for the answer. Mara noticed how Claire barely looked up from her phone when Daniel spoke, how she waved away details as if people were interchangeable parts in a perfect image. Daniel, on the other hand, remembered everything: Noah's favorite subject, Mara's work schedule, the hospital hallway where his sister used to sleep. Nothing crossed a line, yet something shifted. Awareness settled between them, quiet and unmistakable. Mara didn't trust it. She had lived long enough to know that attention could vanish the moment it asked for nothing in return. The weeks before the wedding compressed time itself. Claire's demands multiplied, each one delivered with impatience disguised as stress. The florist invoice was wrong. The rehearsal dinner menu needed revisions. Guests were rearranged without warning. Every problem found its way to Mara. No please. No thanks. Just expectation. At night, while emails piled up, Mara sat at the kitchen table helping Noah build a papier-mâché volcano. Glue stuck to their fingers. Baking soda dusted the floor. "You're doing too much," Noah said quietly, shaping the mountain. Mara paused. "What makes you think that?" He shrugged. "You're tired all the time. You don't laugh like you used to." The honesty landed harder than any insult. Mara smiled then, not because things were easy, but because her son saw her clearly, and still chose her. Daniel called the next afternoon. His voice was steady, but not casual. "Can we talk somewhere quiet?" They met at a coffee shop near the marina, the air thick with salt and steam. Daniel didn't sit back. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I want you to be my maid of honor." Mara stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "That's not your choice," she said. "Claire didn't even want me in the wedding party." Daniel nodded. "She said she didn't need one." "I do." Silence stretched between them. "You're marrying my sister," Mara said carefully. "I know," he replied. "And I'm realizing I don't know her the way I should. But I know what you are. I remember what you were when no one was watching." Mara didn't answer. She didn't agree. She didn't refuse. Some doors don't open all at once. The fallout came fast. Patricia called that night, her voice sharp with controlled fury. "You've upset your sister," she said. "Why do you always make things difficult?" Mara listened, calm in a way that surprised even her. "I didn't ask for anything," she replied. "Daniel did." Patricia scoffed. "You love playing the victim." Mara ended the call without argument. Noah looked up from the couch, sensing the tension. "Was that Grandma?" he asked. Mara nodded. "She wasn't very kind." Noah thought for a moment. "Then don't listen," he said simply. "You tell me that people who are wrong don't get to decide who we are." Mara smiled, a real one this time. She wondered how long she had been teaching him lessons she hadn't believed about herself. From that point on, Claire avoided Mara entirely. No messages. No corrections. Just absence. Daniel, however, didn't disappear. He showed up at Noah's soccer game one Saturday, standing quietly at the edge of the field. When Noah scored, Daniel clapped like it mattered. Noah ran to them, breathless, grinning, and Daniel dropped to one knee for a high five. Later that night, as Mara tucked Noah into bed, he asked, "Is Daniel going to be around more?" Mara hesitated. "Maybe." Noah nodded, satisfied. "I like him," he said. "He talks to me like I'm real." Mara turned off the light and stood in the doorway longer than necessary. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something she had to endure. It felt uncertain, but open. By the time the wedding week arrived, tension sat in the air like humidity before a storm. Claire moved through events with brittle perfection, smiling only when watched. Mara stayed useful and quiet, exactly as she always had. She coordinated arrivals, smoothed disputes, fixed last-minute errors without credit or complaint. Daniel watched all of it. He noticed how Claire spoke to vendors, how she dismissed people the moment they served their purpose. More than that, he noticed how differently Mara moved, measured, careful, carrying more than she should without asking for recognition. One night, as they crossed paths backstage during the rehearsal, Daniel paused beside her. "You don't owe anyone this much," he said softly. Mara met his eyes. "I know." It was the first time she'd ever said it out loud. The morning of the wedding arrived bright and unyielding. Charleston wore its best face, blue sky, soft wind, jasmine in bloom. Mara dressed simply, a pale blue gown that didn't demand attention. Noah stood beside her in a navy suit, adjusting his tie with solemn concentration. You look strong, he told her. At the church, crystal chandeliers caught the light, white roses lined the aisle, and everything looked flawless. Claire stood in the bridal room, radiant and sharp, correcting photographers and snapping at attendants. When she glanced at Mara, her eyes narrowed briefly. Try not to draw attention to yourself, she said. Mara didn't respond. She adjusted Claire's veil with steady hands, performing every duty with quiet precision. She wasn't there to be loved. She was there to finish what she'd started. The ceremony passed without incident. Vows were exchanged. Applause rose. Daniel stood at the altar, composed but distant, his gaze drifting more than once to the front pew where Noah sat beside his father, legs swinging, eyes bright. When Mara returned to her seat, Noah smiled at her like she'd done something brave. She smiled back. For a moment, it felt like the storm had passed. The reception hall shimmered with candlelight and music. Champagne flowed. Conversations swelled. Claire took the microphone midway through dinner, tapping it lightly, commanding the room without effort. I want to thank everyone for celebrating us tonight, she said sweetly. The room quieted. Mara felt something tighten in her chest. She knew that tone. She had heard it her whole life. Claire's smile sharpened. And of course, she continued, I want to acknowledge my sister, Mara. Heads turned. She's proof that strength comes in many forms. Raising a child alone isn't easy, especially when life doesn't quite choose you. Uneasy laughter rippled through the room. Claire tilted her head. She's still finding her way, she added lightly. Some people get things new. Others take what's available. Patricia laughed too loudly. Mara felt Noah's hand shake in hers. She stood, instinctively, ready to leave, ready to protect what mattered. A chair scraped behind her. The sound cut through the room like a blade. Daniel was already on his feet. He didn't raise his voice when he took the microphone from Claire's hand. He didn't need to. This stops now, he said. The room went silent. He turned, not to the crowd, but to Mara. We didn't just meet, he said clearly. Years ago, my sister was dying in Memorial Children's Hospital. Mara was there. She read to her. She sang to her. She made the worst days bearable. Murmurs spread. Daniel looked back at the guests. Her son drew stars for my sister when she couldn't sleep. She kept them by her bed. He faced Claire then, his expression steady. Anyone who speaks about them with contempt doesn't understand love. He took a breath. And I won't marry someone who doesn't. Gasps filled the room. Claire froze. Mara felt the world tilt, then settle. Something old had finally broken. Something honest had taken its place. For a moment, no one moved. Then whispers erupted like sparks catching dry air. Claire stared at Daniel as if he had spoken in a foreign language. You don't mean that, she said, her voice thin. Daniel met her gaze without anger. I do. Patricia stood abruptly, her face drained of color. You're humiliating this family, she snapped. Daniel turned toward her calmly. No, he said. I'm telling the truth. He stepped away from the head table and knelt in front of Noah. Thank you, he said quietly, for being exactly who you are. Noah nodded, unsure but proud. Daniel stood and held out his hand to Mara. She hesitated only long enough to feel Noah squeeze her fingers. Then she took Daniel's hand, and together they walked out of the ballroom, past shock, past judgment, past the life that had never made room for her. Outside, the night air felt cool and forgiving. The noise of the reception faded behind them, replaced by distant water and the hum of the city settling down. Daniel hailed a cab without speaking. He took them to a small seafood place by the harbor, wooden tables, string lights, nothing polished. Noah colored on a napkin while the adults sat in silence, the kind that didn't demand explanation. Finally, Daniel spoke. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Mara shook her head. You saw it when it mattered. His phone buzzed on the table. Claire's name lit the screen. Daniel turned it face down. Some things end, he said simply. Mara looked at Noah, at the man beside her, and realized she wasn't afraid of endings anymore. The next morning, they visited the cemetery overlooking the bay. Wind moved softly through the trees. Daniel carried white daisies. Noah held a small stone painted with stars, the edges worn smooth. They stopped at a simple marker. Daniel knelt, placing the flowers carefully. She kept your drawings, he told Noah. They made her feel brave. Noah swallowed hard. I didn't know she remembered me. Daniel smiled. She never forgot you. Mara watched them, feeling something settle in her chest. It wasn't grief. It was release. When Daniel stood, he took Mara's hand. This time, she didn't think about who might see. A year changed everything. Mara opened a small financial office downtown, warm, modest, honest. Daniel insisted on the name, Whitfield Financial. You built this, he told her. Clients came because she listened. Business grew steadily, not loudly. At home, Noah thrived. He stood taller, spoke with confidence, defended kids who were overlooked. Daniel never missed a game, a bedtime story, or a quiet dinner. They didn't rush anything. They didn't need to. As for Claire, she moved away quietly. The calls stopped. Patricia left voicemails that went unanswered. Mara didn't feel angry. She felt finished. On Christmas Eve, the house glowed with soft light. Noah slept on the couch, the tree reflected in the window behind him. Daniel sat beside Mara by the fire and opened a small box. Inside was a simple emerald ring. My sister asked me to give this to someone who reminded me what love actually is, he said. He took a breath. Will you marry me? Mara didn't rush her answer. She looked at the ring. At her son. At the life she had built without permission. Yes, she said. Outside, snow began to fall, light and quiet, as if the world had finally learned how to be gentle. Mara once believed survival was the goal. That staying quiet was the price of peace. She was wrong. Peace came when she stopped shrinking. Love came when she stopped proving. The moment her sister tried to define her in public became the moment her life changed in private. She had a home now, not just walls, but people who chose her as she was. A son who shone. A man who never asked her to be smaller. Some people called her life secondhand. She called it lived, earned, and real. And for the first time, that was more than enough. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story spoke to you, remember, your worth was never up for debate. Please don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments.